Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show, bright and early on a Monday morning, and it's great to have your company at the start of a new week. Now, in most of our lives, we spend time every day interacting with many people in different spheres of our lives, and building relationships with these people can obviously be a great investment to further develop yourself as a person and also as a professional. But there does come a time, however, when it's necessary to evaluate whether these relationships are good for you in the long run, or it's time to clean out the clutter where most advantageous.
So today we are asking, do you regularly take stock of the relationships in your life? How do you decide who to cut out of your life and when to do so? This morning we are joined by relationship expert and TEDx speaker Paula Quinsee to help us discuss this hot topic, and we would love to hear your questions and your comments as well. So you can head over to our Facebook page, drop a comment on the post, and we will engage with you live on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Paula, so good to have you in studio.
Yes.
I constantly am just stalking her on the socials.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
highly
good,
motivational
good.
stuff if ever
Fantastic.
you need to see it.
So let's talk about this circle of influence. People like to say, "What? Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future," kind of thing, right? So, what exactly are we talking about when we talk about a circle of influence?
So there's research that's been done that we become the collective sum of the 5 people that we spend most of our time with, whether that be in your personal space or your professional space. And these people influence us as much as we influence them. So the easiest, simplest example is if you look at young people, young adults, teenagers, when they hang around in their group of friends, their close circle, they start dressing similar, they start behaving similar, they start interacting similar with each other. And because we start feeding off each other, and our ideas and our opinions and all that becomes collective. And so that becomes our circle of influence.
How exactly can one's circle of influence impact your life for the better and for the worse?
Well, you can have a positive circle of influence or a negative circle of influence. Positive circle of influence would be a group of people that can hold you accountable, that can call you out on your behavior, that can motivate you, that can inspire you. Whereas the negative circle of influence can really end up putting you in situations that you don't want to be in, or keep changing your mind or your opinion, and sort of, that power of persuasion, those kind of things.
Yeah. Why would you say then it is so important to regularly take stock of the relationships that you have in your life?
As we grow and evolve and develop, and as we go through different life stages, our outlook on life changes, our perceptions change, and our needs change as well. And there's that saying about, a relationship for a season, a reason, and a lifetime. And sometimes we've moved on in our life, and other people have moved on different paths. And we end up where we just sometimes drift apart, or we don't have similar things in common anymore, or we are on the same path and we can be a great support network for each other.
Wonderful. Well, we are talking to Paula Quinsee about relationships. I want to know from you, Paula, how do you know when a relationship has run its course?
I think it's, you go into those situations where you start dreading being around that person. Or you start trying to find excuses or reasons why you can't go to that event or that occasion or see that person. Or just when you've been with that person, you walk away and you feel drained, it feels heavy. And that's already clues that something is not going right in this relationship space.
Wow.
That's pretty
Okay.
powerful.
A lot
I don't
of
know if
things
you
to consider
I don't know if you
clearly.
remember Justin Bieber at a time in his life when he was at his most destructive. It was the people around him, his circle of influence that were pushing him to do all of the wrong things. And when he eventually moved away from them, that's where I think his life went to a more healthy place.
So that whole toilet paper and egg situation?
All the friends, man. All the friends.
Listen, engage with us on social media. Feed through your questions on Facebook to Paula Quinsee as we delve into this topic on Relationship Talk Monday. We discussed our circle of influence. Maybe you are currently taking stock of the friends and the relationships in your life and deciding to cut some people out. Maybe you got some advice on how somebody can do that effectively in order to grow as a human being. We'll be back again with Paula.
Cut him out. Cut him.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Well, we're back with our relationship talk. Paula Quinsee is in the studio, and we're talking about having to regularly take stock of your relationships. Before we went to a break, I asked Paula about when do you know that a relationship has run its course, and of course you gave us some really great advice on that. But sometimes a relationship doesn't really need to always be cleared out. Sometimes it needs to be topped up so that you can reassess the values. Is that right?
Yeah, you know, over time, as we get caught up in our busy worlds and we kind of are following our own path, we tend to lose touch with our friends because we get caught up in doing what we want to do, our life, children, family, work, career, etc., that we don't make time for our relationships. And as you know, I always say, if you don't make time for a relationship over time, you're not going to have a relationship.
This is true. This is true.
So it's about how do you then, you know, make time for those special people in your life. And it doesn't have to be lots of time, but just how do you regularly check in? How are you doing? How are things going? How's life? Spending time together, improving communication, doing things together, because that's what builds a relationship.
Yeah, and sometimes as easily as just picking up the phone and just saying, I'm calling for no other reason than just to say, I was thinking about you and I'm wondering how you're doing. You good? Okay. And that's a, you know, 10-second conversation to allow somebody else to know that you are important in my life. Yes. I wanted to ask you whether you have a quick, maybe 5 checklist questions that one can ask yourself to determine whether a relationship is valuable enough to keep around in your life. So if you are doing that stock take and you want to know, is this person worth keeping around? What kind of questions should you be asking yourself?
So I think the first question would be, you know, what is the value that this person brings to my life? Are they someone I can rely on? Are they someone I can depend on? Do they have my back? Can I trust them? How do they uplift me, motivate me, inspire me? Also, how do they hold me accountable and how do they call me out on my behavior? Because that's what a good friendship does. We can have those honest conversations and say, hey, you know. I would also look at how much effort is going into this relationship from both sides, you know, because a relationship is like a partnership. So it can't just be one-sided. And if you're feeling that it's one-sided, then you need to look at from whose side is it one-sided. Because maybe you need to be the one making a little bit more effort into building that relationship and nurturing that relationship. Yeah. How much time do you spend together with this person? You know, how often and regularly do you see each other? Is it, because you get those relationships where sort of once every 3 months or 6 months you can pick up the phone or get together and it's like you haven't been apart. You can just pick up, you know, and so is it one of those or is it like awkward conversation and you're trying to find things to say to each other and, you know, you're not really connecting. It's like more an acquaintance than a real good friendship. So I would say those are some of the key signs. And then, you know, how do you think about this relationship in your own mind? Do you think of it in a positive way or do you think about it negatively? And then how are you showing up and co-creating that relationship?
That's powerful stuff. Yeah, well, you can go to our Facebook page, of course, comment on our question on relationships and taking stock thereof. But I also wanted to ask you, Paula, you know that we were talking about this whole circle of influence and the people that are in your life. Is it true that sometimes people can be in your life, you can love them dearly, but those people are not always for you? In terms of they don't always have your best interest at heart. And how does one actually begin to realize that? They might not even know it, but they're not seeking your best.
Yeah, I like to call it innocent ignorance in that some people are just so wrapped up in their own world and their own perspective on the world that they don't really stop to take time to kind of think of others. So they're always thinking of themselves first and not what others need or the other people in their lives. And as they go through life, they are often sometimes perceived as being selfish or self-absorbed. And it's not necessarily that they're doing it intentionally or maliciously. It's just that that's who they are. They have what we would call a sort of a low level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
I want to tap into that a little bit when we come back, and I want to just maybe plant the seed of this question. You were talking about people that are valuable in your life in terms of the fact that they can call you out on your behavior. How do you draw the line between people that are able to do that versus people that are there to bring you down through what they say? And, you know, because it can be a gray area. You want to be able to have a relationship and a friendship with people that are completely and utterly honest with you and able to call you out, but you don't want people that are focused on bringing you down maliciously and think that is a manner in which
True.
they're trying to build you.
Yes.
All right, so with that said, comment on our Facebook page. We've got a post about these friendships we're talking about, taking stock of your relationships. Engage with us in that conversation. We'll be back again with Paula Quinsee very shortly.
It's my feel good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Happy Monday, and today we're cleaning out the closet. It's relation Eminem.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
that rendition. Paula Quinsee is here, and we're talking about taking stock of the relationships and friendships in your life and how you determine whether those are fruitful or not. Let's quickly take a look at what you had to say on social media.
Exactly. Heading to the socials this morning, Coty says, well, regarding relationships, you can't hold on to past relationships as it will influence your new relationships in the future. But if there are kids involved, you can't cut the other party out as the kids need both parents.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I guess
definitely
obviously a
speaking
different
from-
side of
different
the angle of
perspective
conversation,
there.
but relationships nonetheless.
Yes, I will definitely refresh this and see if we have more.
In the
answers
meantime,
coming up.
while you
Yes.
do that,
Do
I posed the
things.
question to Paula about how you determine whether the people in your life, your friends more specifically, are there to build you, i.e. be honest with you and call you out on your behavior, or people that are there posing as, oh, I'm just being honest, as you were saying, I'm just being honest, but in fact their intention is to break you down.
Yeah.
How do you define that line?
It is a very fine line because, you know, if you don't have a strong sense of self where you can speak your mind and where you can choose how you want to use that information or that feedback from that friend that's giving you that feedback, you can be persuaded or you can be overruled, you know, in terms of those boundaries being overstepped. So it's about how can you have that honest discussion, but in a respectful way, not a way to criticize you, to fault find, to be destructive, really. Those kind of relationships are toxic. And over time, it is going to have an impact on your mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah. Can we head back to some comments
Let's.
here? I see
Yes.
Gary Oakham says, just because I have a double-story house, I drive a BMW, doesn't mean I'm super wealthy. When my so-called friends borrow money from me, I felt they have the attitude of, well, he's rich, why must I pay him back? I'm not a multimillionaire, and I've just adopted the principle that I don't lend money to people anymore. If I can afford it, I'd rather give them the money, provided it is for a legitimate reason.
That seems to make sense to me.
Exactly. He's making peace. I'm just going to give it to you instead of expecting it back. Lorato says, yes, I certainly do get rid of people that weigh down on my relationships because they become really toxic at some point. They tend to complicate things at times, more especially friends. One moment all is well, the next we are fighting because of the kind of indirect influence that friends have. And then I also like what Palesa says, how do you know if the person you're cutting off won't be something you'll come to regret later in life?
Good question.
Hey? That's a
Question.
really, really good one.
Yeah. I would say, you know, if you do feel that it's a relationship that right now where you are in your life isn't adding value, it's okay to take some time out. There are people that have rekindled a friendship or a relationship a couple of months or years down the line, but it's just where you are at this point in your life that, you know, you're on different paths, and so you're not going to necessarily add that additional value or that same value as maybe you could later down the line when you've matured a lot more and have different ways of now managing and dealing with that relationship and building and nurturing that relationship.
Okay. So say now you've decided that you are going to be cleaning up the closet.
Yeah.
You decided who are the people you're cleaning out of your life. Give us some tools. How do you go about doing that in the most appropriate manner that establishes that this is what's happening? Because I'm assuming you don't just ghost people. You don't just like disappear out of their lives. Or is that a good
I
thing
feel like
to do?
a lot
Do
of
you
people
just-
ghost people,
Well,
especially when
you
it comes to like difficult topics. A lot of people
Yes.
don't know how to broach difficult topics, and so what you do is you just step away from it. But that's so hurtful for someone who's very much still involved in a friendship.
Yeah, because
you
on the
know?
other side, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, I like to call them courageous conversations because we don't
I love
like to have those conversations because it's difficult and it's not nice. And a lot of the times also why we struggle with our friendships and in circles of influence is we find it difficult to say no.
Yeah.
to people, for example, lending money as an example, because we don't want to feel the bad person or we're letting someone down, or, you know, and it's also that fear of, well, if I say no, I'm going to be rejected and I'm going to lose my friendship. So in this case, it would be, well, look at it from two ways. One, is it a relationship where you still have respect for the person and you want to sit down and have that courageous conversation and say, look, where we are right now, I don't really see our friendship bringing much value to each other or contributing to each other's lives in a positive way. So I'm taking some time out, or I'm just on a different path and I'm moving on. That doesn't mean that, you know, I'm never going to see you again, but potentially in instances you may not see that person, depending on whether you're going to cut them out completely, even ghost them, because that does happen at times because people don't know how to have those conversations.
Don't ghost them. Oh.
It's hard.
It's hard. It is really. Well, we're going to keep this conversation going on the socials. Had we had time, I would have loved to find out how does one make new connections once you've realized that, the squad is no longer a squad. But definitely you can go to our Facebook page. We are asking the question, when do you know it's time to really start taking stock of those friendships and maybe moving on to something else without ghosting? Don't ghost.
Was the nabangani bako or not?
It's my feel good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Monday morning relationship talk with Paula Quinsee, and we're talking about taking stock of your relationships and more particularly friendships in your life and how to decide who's good to keep around and who's good to clean out of the closet. So once you've done that and now you want to maybe go back to that relationship. Shall we take on that first? Let's do that.
Let's
How
take on
do
that
you
one first.
go back and go, I made a mistake and I should not have cut you out of my life over the past 3 years and now I want back in? Is it as simple as that?
It's not as simple as that. I would use, it's similar like going back to an ex. The first thing is, well, you need to understand, well, what wasn't working in the relationship in the first place? And that led us to have our breakup, whether it was romantic or friendship. And how do we fix that? How do we resolve that? And that may take a discussion around apologizing, forgiveness, acceptance, wiping the slate clean and starting afresh again and rebuilding the relationship from a new perspective. Because that past relationship is gone. You can't go back and fix it. You can't go back and fetch it and make it something new. It's actually gone. So you've got to let it go and start completely afresh again. But this time have very clear boundaries in place, very clear communication, so that you don't end up going through the same thing the second time round.
And of course, hoping that that person is at a place in their life where they want to have that relationship with you again, because they might have just moved on. You know?
Correct, absolutely.
Another scenario that actually just popped into my mind is, what was it? I forgot.
So it was about whilst you are in that separated state now, seeking new connections.
Yes.
And how to go about
Before that one, though, sometimes you are friends with people and you feel like you want to break free from that friendship. You know it's not for you anymore, but you're afraid because of certain things that you've shared with that friend, that once they no longer have the responsibility to keep it because they are your friend, they could potentially tell the world. What do you do in a situation like that? Because you've shared really sensitive information with them. Now they're free to really do what they want.
Almost like staying in a friendship out of like fear?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. And that can happen because you've shared, you know, friendship is almost like a relationship or partnership where you've shared some deep, intimate stuff.
Yeah.
And the fear of that coming out can actually keep you in that relationship because you don't want to be exposed. But if you end the relationship in a respectful way, in a mature way, and understand that it's walked its course, you know, but there's no guarantees that that person is not going to share those things, and unfortunately, that is the risk that you can take when you end a relationship that's been toxic or that's walked its path.
Yeah.
But let's end this positively, shall we? How do we go about making new connections when we have ended a friendship? And sometimes you just need to develop, you need to grow, you need to move on. How do you even begin to make new connections with people?
Most important is having a sense of self in terms of who you are, what makes you happy, and the kind of people that you want to have in your life. It would also depend on life stage and also your interest and where you're going in life. And then put yourself out in those places where you're going to find those like-minded people. So let's say, for example, you now want to start living a healthy, active lifestyle. you would put yourself out in places where you're going to meet like-minded people that share those interests to
Yeah.
create a new social circle or new friendships, whether it be the gym, whether it be park runs, whether it be going to health and fitness expos or things like that. It's how do you create new circles of influence that talk to where you're at in life and what your needs are, and that you can contribute backwards
Yeah.
in terms of those same kind of interests.
Wow, fantastic insights. Thank you very much, Paula, for joining us this morning. And we hope that you took something out of that conversation, but do keep it going with us on social media, on Facebook, and of course, hashtag Expresso Show. But right now, we're going to go to the kitchen, and I don't know if I saw correctly, but Gabriella is wearing a chef's jacket, which means something special must be going down.